Welcome. This is Money Heart, where we explore the emotional side of money. I'm Camille Diaz, and today we're discussing how thoughts become things. My guest today is Lisa Odon. She wants to live in a world where thou shalt belly laugh daily becomes the 11th commandment, singing becomes our universal language, confidence robbers are taken captive, destroyed forever, forbidden to roam the earth, and dog hair is repelled off living room floors by an invisible force field. As a music teacher with more than 35 years of experience, she found her most creative self when she was working with children. As a sales professional with 6 years of experience, she found her administrative and business-minded self with a unique ability to network and connect with people. As a volunteer group facilitator at her church, she found her leadership and I'm kicking butt self. Now she is on a journey of melding all three worlds together in her ministerial pursuits alongside her husband, Michael. Lisa, welcome to Money Heart. Glad to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned when we first talked about you kind of having one view as you were growing up and then sort of did a major mindset overhaul as you started examining your relationship with money. How did all that kind of evolve?
Well, let's go back, if it's okay with you, to how I grew up and how money was viewed in my house.
Absolutely.
I was a little oblivious to it until I became a sophomore in high school, because up until that time, I always considered ourselves financially well off. I would say if we put a label on our income status growing up, it was probably middle class for sure, maybe even upper middle class. My parents were two very respected business people in our community, extremely professional, and I would say they had high reputations in our community. So I never really thought about money. Money just always seemed to be there. We went on vacations. We had food to eat. We had a nice house. Just didn't really think about it until my father and mother sold the family flower shop. And then my dad became very ill, and the money that they used from that sale went to his hospital bills because he had so much history being ill that the insurance companies didn't cover him anymore. They had to pay cash for all of that. And that was the first time that I ever tangibly experienced or visibly experienced my parents being in financial straits. It was a really scary time for them. That's when I began really becoming more conscious of fear. They still made it. They still found a way. They turned their house into a bed and breakfast because we were in a very well-to-do community, East Hampton, Long Island, which is part of the Hamptons, which is still considered a very well-to-do community. So they got a lot of business with their bed and breakfast for the city folk coming in, wanting a vacation by the beach. I mean, they found their way despite that sale, yet there was just this constant fear. My mother would literally fill the attic with things, sewing machines, clothing, china, dinnerware, silverware, and even the cellar. And it took probably the better part of a year when they finally moved away from that house to get through all of those things. She was very organized. Everything was very neatly organized, but it literally was wall to wall in the attic, wall to wall in the cellar. And I finally had the courage to ask her, why do you keep so much stuff? And she said, because if anything ever happened to us financially, I was not going to do without. I was going to be able to have plates to eat on. I was going to be able to have clothes to wear. It was almost as if she was trying to cram the stuff of life into the attic and the cellar as a cushion for her, almost expecting financial ruin. And she is a child of the Depression. She never said, I don't remember her consciously making a connection to the Depression, but I'm trying to piece two and two together that it may have stemmed from that. And I also used to remember her telling me things like, marry a wealthy man, because if you marry a wealthy man, that wealth is going to give you opportunities that no other thing could give you, like forgetting that, is the man a good man? Are you marrying for love?
That's not a big deal. Doesn't matter if you like him or not.
I mean, my mother she was just a trip sometimes, and so I kept getting these mixed messages, which also sent me a message that the only way I could become wealthy would be to marry into wealth. That was the message that I got from her.
Wow.
But I really was not conscious that I was getting these messages until I actually ventured into that sales part of my life, which began in 2014. Up until that time, I grew up, I went to college, left college, got a job teaching, and my teaching career began, got married, had children, and then found myself in hard times financially. My husband and I were broke a few times, literally, like 3 cents in our checkbook, broke, at times. And I just felt like I was now manifesting that fear that my mother in particular, I felt had instilled in me. But I did, eventually go back into the classroom, start teaching again once my kids were older, started making some money for myself. My husband kept getting promoted in his job, and we had, we did pretty well, and we, looking back, we did pretty well, even with the mindsets that we had. So, but it wasn't until I made a shift and started really studying business, actually being in business, starting a business. I even worked for a business coaching firm for a while, and all those years I was surrounded by business and continue to be, but that's when I was started to be taught about mindset. So a mindset journey began at that time, unlike no other time in my life. And as I mentioned with you, the Bible is my standard for living, and I'm very active in going to church. And the Bible has a lot to say about money. And I had some great teaching at our church about money. We had a pastor who did a great job, in hindsight, teaching about it, because he actually encouraged you to prosper. That's your God-given right to prosper. So I'm very, very grateful, for the good, what I consider to be great teaching that we had, which may explain why we did as well as we did, until I got down to the real root of what was keeping me from going any further. I wanted to make a transition from just being able to pay the bills and having a little bit left over to really understanding what wealth meant, what wealth means, what is money all about. And it was when I started in business that journey, that part of the journey began to supplement what I had learned in the Bible. And that's where I began to explore my family history and how they viewed money. And that's when I began to get in touch with my own fears about money. One thing that I saw my parents do was work hard, but always complain about money. Yet we lived in a nice house. So then I was living that out. I worked hard in business, and I made, I did bring income in,
Yes,
but it's
which is
certainly
great when you have your own business.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
everybody manages that right away.
yeah. I did get income in, but how profitable was I really? And in all honesty, I was not really truly what I would consider to be profitable. I would say the first 4 years in that journey of business, because I had this blockage. Um, I'm going to work hard, but the money's just not going to come in.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, how
So,
could it? You're just, it can't. You're just starting out, right? For
yeah,
4 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, subconsciously and even somewhat consciously, I know that thoughts become things.
Right.
And I know that we are to ask, believe, and receive. Those are actually biblical principles. And there's one ministry in Broken Arrow that I believe built their whole ministry on ask, believe, and receive. So these are not new principles. But it wasn't until I met someone at a networking meeting who was sharing how Conor McGregor, the great martial arts fighter, what is it, UFC?
Yes.
Yeah, do I
Yeah.
have that right?
I
I heard
think so. I don't really know. The mixed
yeah.
martial arts where it's kind of scary to watch because they're really intense. Yeah.
Well, Conor
In
McGregor.
the sort of ring thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You can tell my knowledge is really, really big on this issue.
me too. All I know is that once Conor McGregor is in a fight, my sons are down at B-Dubs at Buffalo Wild Wings, and they are watching with the whole crowd Conor McGregor at work. So,
There you go.
but I did. Someone at a network meeting was telling me about Conor McGregor, how he had read a book called The Secret, and he basically went from being a plumber's apprentice in Dublin to becoming one of the greatest, if not the all-time great. I think he's like the all-time great and has produced records that no other UFC fighter. And forgive me if you know what you're talking about. Forgive me for not getting the acronym right.
That's okay, because even that I don't really know that world very well. When you said the name, I was like, oh yeah, the fighter guy. Like I that popped into my head. So clearly he's done enough that even those of us that don't really follow that sport still recognize the name.
Absolutely. Well, he built his whole journey from plumber's apprentice in Ireland to becoming this great fighter, and now he's also a great entrepreneur. He has started, I believe it's a brewery company that he's very proud of, and there's an interview between him and Tony Robbins if anybody ever wants to listen to it. But he credits that movie, actually it was a movie as well, The Secret, and so I just got curious and I went ahead and downloaded the book via audiobook. And it just rocked my world. And I may get some furrowed eyebrows because some people may consider that book new age. It's considered a self-help book. But the way I look at it is I separate the wheat from the chaff. I know what my standards for living are, and I know where I'm going to align them. And that's against the Word of God in the Bible. And I don't agree with everything in that book, but I would say that 85% of that book, oh my gosh, it's back to thoughts become things, ask, believe, and receive. So it actually challenged me to go deeper in my faith. There are scriptures that say all things are possible to him who believes. So that just challenged me. Where is my belief? Where is my belief? It just challenged me to live in the land of belief, true belief, and to live in the land of renewing my mind and being transformed by the renewing of that mind. And it reminded me to not be afraid to ask and just to trust that the strategies will come and receive them as blessings when they come. And it also reminded me to be grateful. There is such power in being grateful. And I've heard great entrepreneurs say, if you can tap into the power of gratitude, it will really be the secret to your business.
Yes.
And
yes.
It sounds so simple. And I think the big secret of The Secret is that it's so simple. And the big secret of successful business is so simple, we tend to overlook it and just not believe it.
Well, kind of like when you started your business and you were working really hard and not making lots of money, just, overcomplicating the situation, right? We're
Exactly.
experts at that. Just, so I just need to be grateful and then put in the effort, make a plan, believe that it's going to work, see it through. Okay, yeah. But it's simple and not easy. I think that's always the big key. It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah,
Well,
because
I know this. Go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt. I can hold my thought and let you finish your
No,
sentence.
because I was about to ask you a new question. So go ahead.
Well, sometimes we go blind. Sometimes we honestly don't know what the plan is.
Yeah.
And I think that was my thing. Lord, I want this. I'm asking for this, but I'm also learning that the strategies will come. You just start doing what you know to do today, and that just trust that new ideas will come. You magnetize the things, and you magnetize the articles, and you magnetize the people that will help you, give you ideas for those strategies. It's just amazing. So if anybody's tripped up about that, I don't have a plan. Really, at the onset, you don't need to have one. If you don't understand what it is, just trust that it will come, and then when it comes, implement it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because a lot of us do get caught up, and I know I've done this plenty of times, on I have to know everything before I can start anything. So we have to have this whole big deal in place before we can do the tiniest step. And like you're saying, okay, well, if you know this much, you can go that far. And if you know a little bit more, then you can go a little bit farther. And so just get started on something. And then if it turns out that you've got to make a change, switch it, do the next thing. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great point. Yeah. What I was going to ask you was, I know you told me some stories about how you have implemented this and actually seen the results of focusing your thoughts on what it was you wanted, and then continuing to do the work even if you weren't quite sure what you needed to do, and then seeing things show up. So give us just a little bit of insight into how this has actually played out for you.
Okay, well, why don't I start with my biggest leap of faith yet?
Okay.
I started writing checks, one of which was a check for $100,000 a year. I had written a check that I was going to make $100,000 by the end of December 31st, 2019.
So are you writing this check out to yourself?
I wrote it out to myself.
Okay.
And I didn't believe it when I wrote it. I want to stress that point, because I look at a figure like that and I go, yeah, right. When have I ever made $100,000? However, even though I didn't believe it when I wrote it, I was wanting to get to the place where I believed it.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing.
Sure.
To believe it. So I began looking at that check every single day, and I began calling it forth, reading it out. This is from the bank of the universe, my God, my creator, and I'm going to receive a check for $100,000, or I'm going to make $100,000 collectively, whatever. It's going to be $100,000, and the strategies will come. And I had all these things written down, and I just went about my business. Well, fast forward to October. I think it was October 4th, if I'm not mistaken. It was a Thursday, maybe early October. And my husband and I were eating breakfast, and a pile of mail had accrued on the kitchen table, about 2 weeks worth of mail.
Sure.
So we literally had this triangular mountain.
I've had one of those. I understand what you mean.
Of mail on our kitchen table. And out of this little mountain of mail, there is this envelope that's sticking out, and it looked official. And I said, I have a feeling we better open that up because that looks official. So we opened it up, and it was a letter from his former employer, from a company that he had worked for probably 10 years earlier. Now, we knew we were going to get a pension from that company, but we didn't know when, we didn't know how much, we hadn't really thought that much about it yet. And in this letter, they were giving us an opportunity as a one-time option to take out the collective amount in the pension. And it was a little bit over $100,000.
Nice.
Of money. And the catch is that I was supposed to leave that day for a conference in Norman, Oklahoma. And the deadline to get all of the paperwork in was like the very next day, and I was going to be gone the next day. And this is just not my husband's thing, to deal with all of this paperwork.
I'm also in charge of forms in my family. I totally get it.
So I literally had just a few hours that morning and into the early afternoon to figure out how we were going to make this happen. And just a series of events occurred where my broker had a busy schedule, but then something opened up and he had like an hour window where we could come in and do this paperwork, and my husband could get away from work for an hour, to come take care of this paperwork. And we were able to get everything faxed and notarized notarized and signed. And then we put it in the mail, snail mail, that day. And then about a month later, we received a literal physical check for that, $125,000 or whatever it was, which we did roll over into our IRA and our accounts, as opposed to, just spend it. But the point being is, do you think I'm complaining that $100,000, do you think I'm complaining that it came that way, as opposed to, how I originally wanted it to come?
I'm going to guess no, you didn't care, because $100,000 showed up.
$100,000 showed up.
Yeah.
Now, I am still working on that other thing, but I am not disappointed. I just know it's going to happen, and I'm going to be making the six figures that I would like to make one day. I know that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. In the meantime, I'm encouraged by all these and there's several others that I shared with you, but you just asked me to keep it simple.
Yeah, you actually told me this has happened to you 3 or 4 more times, that you've done a similar process and the check showed up in the pile or wherever.
Oh, yes. And another thing that we've been really having fun with is checks in the mail. What you expect is what you receive.
Mm.
And that sounds really simple. It's that thoughts become things. This is why it's so important. You have to tap into your subconscious and finding out what's really going on, because it's what you're thinking in your subconscious. That's what's driving your conscious brain. And you really had, the hard part is really digging deep into what's really going on in the inner psyche of your subconscious world. And great business entrepreneurs throughout the centuries, without calling it that, have tapped into that. Hence Think and Grow Rich. So what we expect is what we get. We expect bills as a nation, I would say the human population at large expects bills in the mail. They expect junk in the mail, junk mail. They expect debits to show up in their bank account. What if we flipped that around and expected checks, more checks to arrive in your mailbox than bills, more deposits to arrive in your direct deposit than debits?
Yeah.
What if you made that your expectation? I treat this like a game. I mean, this is really fun.
It's a fun game. I like this game.
It is like a game. It's fun. And so I started doing that. and I would write checks in the mail, and I would speak it forth. And I'm not at the point yet where the checks have, outnumbered the bills on a regular basis, and the deposits have outnumbered the debits yet. But I know it's coming because I started this maybe September of last year, September of 2019, and we've had many incidents. I just showed you the other day. We've had several checks just come in the mail that we were not expecting, one of which I showed you the other day.
Yes.
We literally were not expecting that check, and it showed up in the mail for an amount and a time that we were not expecting it. And so it's really fun, to have those checks come in the mail, or just money show up in your bank account, or that you weren't expecting. So, yeah, have fun with that. I encourage people to have fun with this. And, something that really tripped me up, if I may go in this direction, if I have your permission, about that one question I had about loving money.
Oh, yes. Let's cover that real quick, because I think that's such a popular,
right.
Well, I don't know if I want to say popular, but well-known quote.
Yeah, the quote is from the Bible in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, and it reads, "For the love of money is the root of all evil," in a basic nutshell. And I would say I've met many people who think money is evil, that money in and of itself is evil. And I think they misconstrue that scripture. Now, I mentioned the pastor that I had who did excellent teaching on money. And he was the one who brought out, well, look at what it says. It says, the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, fast forward, because I'm still having guilt for wanting to have money because of that scripture. The love of money, I felt very guilty, for being honest, that I wanted to have money. I wanted to gain wealth. And that scripture really tripped me up. And I'm hearing entrepreneurs, many of whom are Christian, of the Christian faith, and Christian believers like myself, saying that they're not afraid to say that they love money, and they have it. They have it. Again, it was confusing to me. Mm-hmm. And my husband, not long ago, purchased a new Bible for me with large print, so I can read it better. Okay, but I'm going somewhere with this. The translation is called the Amplified Bible, and it is a newer, updated version for those people who may read the Amplified Bible. There's the traditional version, and then there's this newer, more recent, updated version of it. What they do in parentheses is give you the hidden Greek and Hebrew meanings of these words that they feel need expounding or amplification on, for you to get the true, deeper meaning of what that scripture says. Do I have your permission to read it? Because it says it so beautifully, and it just freaked me up. Okay.
Yeah, let's read it and get the real thing there.
Okay, it says in this translation, "For the love of money, that is, the greedy desire for it, and the willingness to gain it unethically, is a root of all sorts of evil. And some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through and through with many sorrows." So the word love here is not about the love that I was perceiving it to be, just a wanting to have it kind of love. Love's a pretty powerful word. It's talking about greedy desire and dishonest gain and unethical means of acquiring it. And that's so not me.
Yeah.
I mean, that just freed me up and gave me permission. People don't give themselves permission to gain wealth. I am not ashamed or embarrassed anymore to say, I love money because the kind of love that I have for money is coming from a generous spirit. It's coming from a place of wanting to please my God. It's coming from a place from wanting to make a difference for other people in their lives. And I also want to do things that I want to do. I want to travel. And I've started that journey, which is a whole other podcast altogether, about my travel fulfillment journeys and, and how money comes into that. I want to live life richly as a giver. And therefore, I have a relationship now that is becoming healthier. I feel like I have a ways to go. But, I mentioned to you, I do believe money is a servant. I don't really believe there's equality. I do believe we are the steward and the money is the servant. In essence, we are the employer and money is the employee. But I am a good employer. I am someone who treats my employees well. I am a good leader. I am a self-aware leader, and I want my employees to keep working for me. I just speak into the kind of healthy relationship that I want. I heard Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He's the general. He is a general, and his money is there. Every single dollar is a soldier, and that's what he calls them. Every single dollar is a soldier that goes out and does a task that he commands it to do. Your soldiers are working for you. I like to be a little bit more compassionate. Not is only money my servant and my soldier. My money is my good employee. And, if you love money, money will love you. If you're not kind to money, money will not be kind to you.
Yep.
And there is an emotional connection with money, even though money is a piece of paper. It's a bullion gold. It's a currency. It's a thing. It's an entity in and of itself. But it's the emotional relationship that we have with it that will determine whether or not you will have wealth or you will not have wealth, really, at the end of the day.
Very true. Very true. This has been awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor and a privilege that you invited me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. When Lisa's not creating Facebook Live video clips to help the human population sleep better at night, or having conversations with people who want more energy or supplements for their workouts, she can be found reading the Bible or a Jen Sincero book, creating old-fashioned family photo albums, watching reruns of The Golden Girls, or crocheting an Afghan that takes 3 years to finish. You can get practical tips on how to sleep better at night by watching her video clips on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can also contact her at lisa@thewellnessgangster.com, and she's on Facebook, facebook.com/lisa.odon. Thank you as well to all of our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Camille Diaz. This show is sponsored by Serenity Financial, a Five Rings financial agency specializing in financial education, living benefits, and guaranteed lifetime income. Our money mantra today is one that was provided by Lisa that I really enjoyed and decided to share with everyone else, which is, I am a great employer and money wants to work with me because I am good to money.